YouTube, what is crack-a-lackin'? It is Scott from SemiPro here, and today we are talking about Redskins quarterback Dwayne Haskins. Now, I'm a firm believer that quarterback success in the NFL is almost entirely circumstantial, and by that I mean that quarterbacks need to have the right coach, the right players, the right scheme, the right culture around them in order to maximize their potential. I think almost all the quarterbacks drafted in the first round of the draft have the capabilities to be great quarterbacks. There is a reason they were scouted that highly. They have immense talent, but those pieces need to fall into place in order for them to actually be good. Now, Dwayne Haskins is a guy who has all that talent and might even have more talent than most first-round quarterbacks, but last year his circumstances were really bad and he was a really underwhelming player, and a lot of people have started to label him a bust. But in this video, we are going to take an objective look at this and figure out if Dwayne Haskins is in fact a bust or if he still has a very bright future. This video is not a final judgment on Dwayne Haskins at all. In my opinion, you have to allow a quarterback 3 years as a starter before you can put that final label on him. I'm simply going with what we have seen from him and what I think his potential could be as I evaluate him in this video. Let's start with the negatives about Haskins so we can end on a positive note. I don't like to trash on guys, but unfortunately, Haskins does have some glaring weaknesses that we do need to address. The first of those being he is wildly inaccurate. Last season, he really struggled to deliver accurate passes on all three levels of the field, and it ended up being a pretty big problem. And it was especially frustrating because one play he'd deliver a perfect pass right to the numbers, and then the next play he'd miss a wide open receiver. So you know he can do it, he just needs to do it on a more consistent basis. I think the reason he's not consistent with this is simply his footwork. If you watch his film, you'll notice that when Haskins throws the ball, he almost squares his feet up to the line of scrimmage, so he's kind of throwing like a baseball warm-up, which is not at all how a quarterback should be throwing the football. So he's absolutely going to need to change that if he wants his accuracy to improve, because it is really hard to deliver an accurate pass when your lower body just isn't into it at all. He's depending all on his arm strength when throwing with that motion. To Haskins' credit, he did improve a lot in both of these categories as the season went on last year, but he still was just never as consistent as you'd like to see. I understand he's young, but these are really simple things that NFL quarterbacks should be doing. And also, there has been footage of him surfacing this offseason of him working out and throwing, and his footwork looks night and day. It looks so much better. He's dropped the BS move where he squares up his feet to the line of scrimmage, and it looks a lot more fluid. Now, that is one thing to be doing it on the practice field compared to doing it in-game, so he'll have to carry that over, but from what I've seen, it does look a lot better. My other big area of concern with Haskins is simply his decision-making. I'm not even talking about the picks. Honestly, with young quarterbacks, I don't even really care about that. They're gonna happen. Plenty of all-time great QBs started off their careers being very interception-prone, and Haskins was no stranger to that. I'm more talking about just his overall decision-making. I'm talking not making the right reads, I'm talking missing wide open receivers, I'm talking not really understanding the situation at hand. There was just a lot of missed opportunities from him last season, and the thing that really bothers me is the fact that he took a lot of unnecessary sacks when he had open receivers down the field. He's going to have to learn how to make his reads and his progressions quicker if he's going to be a good NFL quarterback, because decision making is really, really key. The really frustrating thing about his decision making is that it seemed to regress a lot from his days at Ohio State. There, he was a really good quarterback in terms of breaking down his reads, going from left to right, looking at all 3 or 4 options. He was great at that at Ohio State, but it seemed to really drop off in Washington. The speed of the game obviously got to him a little bit, and he didn't even start for that long at Ohio State, so he wasn't too experienced. I personally would not have started him at all last year. I would have let him sit, but I mean, he has the experience now, and he can build off of it, but you want to see him go back to what he was at Ohio State with his ability to make reads and make decisions. We talked earlier about how key circumstances are in determining quarterback success, and honestly, I'm not a big fan of what Haskins has to work with in Washington. His new offensive coordinator is going to be Scott Turner, who has never been an OC before, and his last job was the quarterbacks coach of the Carolina Panthers, where his big products were a declining Cam Newton Will Grier, and Kyle Allen. Now, granted, Cam Newton did have a decent season, but I honestly put that more on Norv Turner and his ability as an offensive coordinator there. I'm really concerned about what Turner is going to bring to the table here. I won't write him off because this is his first rodeo as an offensive coordinator, but I think if I was Ron Rivera, I'm choosing a guy with experience at the position. Diving more into what Haskins has to work with, we've got to look at his weapons. That's obviously a very key piece here. He's got McLaurin, who had a really good rookie season last year, and he looks like he's going to be a good receiver in this league for a long time, but after that, it looks a little bleak. They have a lot of young late-round draft picks and undrafted guys on this roster. Some of them have nice upside, sure, but they're really unproven and don't have a lot of experience, which really isn't a great combination to pair with a quarterback who is struggling to mature as an NFL player. For his running backs, he's got Adrian Peterson, who was actually pretty good down the stretch last year somehow at 34 years old, and Darius Geis, who is a really promising young running back, but he has really battled injuries throughout his young career. So a lot of talent in this backfield, but two kind of injury question marks with Peterson and Geis. Now here's the key: when you have a quarterback who you're trying to develop, you need a decent offensive line up front of him. You've got to allow him to have time, you've got to allow him to stay on his feet, especially when it's not really a mobile quarterback, and this Redskins offensive line is not a good group at all. It might be the worst positional group on this team. It's a big question mark going into this season, as with the tight end position group, who they don't really have a number one there, and it's going to make it really hard for Haskins to find a security blanket. Alright, I promised I would get to the positives with Haskins, and don't worry, I'm going to now. There were just some things about his game that I had to address. I would be lying to you guys if I just sat here and gassed him up. He is far from a perfect quarterback, but he does have a lot of positives, and that big one is the arm talent. He can make any throw on the football field, and he has A+ arm strength. He is a really poised pocket passer who can hang in there and make a lot of laser throws. Like, Haskins has a lot going for him in that department. The problem is that he's just very raw. He's gonna make mistakes. He's young. He doesn't have much experience in college, not much experience in the NFL. He doesn't have great pieces around him. This guy is a project player, but all of the pieces are there, everything you want. And another big piece that he can add this season is becoming a little bit more mobile and a better improviser. He lost a lot of weight. Hopefully he'll be a little bit faster, a little bit more agile, and he can do a little bit more moving around the pocket. If he can do that, watch out, because this guy has the same level of arm talent as a Carson Wentz. I'm not going to say Patrick Mahomes, that's a little bit next year, but this guy has the same arm talent as a Carson Wentz, a Russell Wilson, a Sam Darnold, other quarterbacks in this league that I like a lot. Dwayne Haskins has it, and if he can hone it and he can develop and Washington can put the right pieces around him, watch out, because he's going to be very good.